Good morning, welcome back to the channel. I've done a lot of other videos about my Moto Guzzi V7, and some things have happened that have made me a bit concerned, and I want to talk about that in this video. First, there were a number of viewers who commented about unreliability of Moto Guzzis. That's not a problem. At least it hasn't been for me in more than 12,000 miles. It's been very reliable, but several people have talked about that. But more recently, one of my viewers commented that the Oklahoma City Moto Guzzi dealer might be going out of business. And I've checked into that, and it's possibly true. And in fact, I can't get them on the phone right now. The other thing that has concerned me is that just 2 months ago, April 14th of this year to be exact, I took it in for its 12,000 mile service. And now, 2 months later, the little wrench symbol has shown up on the instrument panel. Something needs to be fixed. I don't know what it is because I don't know what that wrench symbol is indicating, but I have tried for 2 or 3 days now to get somebody on the phone at my Moto Guzzi dealership. They don't answer the phone. It goes right to voicemail. So I'm going to drive over there now and see what's going on. It's a little bit concerning. I hope that they are still doing service repairs, at least, if they're not actually selling new Moto Guzzi motorcycles. But we're going to find out. Go with me. As I'm riding over to the Moto Guzzi dealership now, I thought I'd talk about a couple of other things that have been a little bit concerning in terms of reliability. I took it in for its 12,000 mile service, but I also had to have an oil leak checked. Now, I have read online a number of places about Moto Guzzis consuming oil, and some people have complained about that, although it doesn't seem to be a real big problem. It turned out that my oil leak was in the stator, that somehow the gasket in the stator had failed and oil was leaking there, and that was a relatively easy fix, but not relatively cheap. As I've talked about before on my channel and other videos, I am not mechanical, I don't work on my own bike, so I had to take it to the dealer to have that oil leak traced down and fixed, and that added a couple $100 to the cost of the 12,000 mile service. But even so, the whole thing was only $550. But just about a month after that, I took the bike on an extended, for me, extended road trip, a couple-hour drive up to Ponca City, where I was going to the Ponca City airport for a drive-in, fly-in breakfast. There's a video on that as well. And on the way back, it started making kind of a growling, rough engine noise as accelerating from idle up to about 3,000 RPM, and then it seems to smooth out. But it has continued to do that ever since. And I'm a little concerned about that sound because it's not what the engine sounded like before. So I'm going to have that checked by the dealer as well, assuming that they are open when I get there. As I roll along here on my way to the dealership, I want to share some of my other thoughts on the Moto Guzzi. I've done a bit of research, and as I said, the reliability does not seem to be actually a real problem. Used to be, perhaps, but the modern Moto Guzzi motorcycles are very reliable, according to all the sources that I have found. Motorcycle News, according to a survey of readers, rates the Moto Guzzi V7 for reliability at 4 out of 5, which is pretty good. Yami Noob did a video on the V7 Sport a few months ago and talked about not only what a great bike it is, and in fact bought a V7 Sport to be one of its giveaway bikes on Yami Noob, but also talked about the reliability as being very good and said that it was the most authentic retro bike when you look at all the different retro bikes, and I would agree with that. And yet, the Moto Guzzis continue to have this running reputation of not being reliable. And I think that's outdated. I think it is mostly reliable. But of course, here I am on my way to the Moto Guzzi dealership to have the little wrench symbol checked just 2 months after the 12,000 mile service. So I'm not sure I'm one to talk. We'll find out. So why don't people buy the Moto Guzzis? That's a very good question. And of course, I only have the V7, so I can't answer about all the other models. Although again, referring to Yami Noob, they recently did a video of the top air-cooled bikes for 2026, new air-cooled bikes. And the Moto Guzzi V85 TT came out on top. But on the other hand, Motorcycle News recently did a smart money test between the Triumph T100 and the Moto Guzzi V7, I think the sport model. And in that one, the Triumph T100 came out on top for a number of reasons. In the pros column for the Moto Guzzi V7, Motorcycle News said that the riding position is straightforward and slim, but it feels hefty, that it has an authentically air-cooled engine which is lusty and characterful with enough punch to match the T100's power, that the V7 is secure and has instinctive steering, and also says that it has charm, decent dynamics, and a rustic appeal that the less authentic T100 can't match. Finally, the tester said that yes, the V7 may feel a bit agricultural, was the word they used, but said, quote, "It's got a vibe, a mojo, especially with its mid-range drive and steering that is more exciting than the T100. But on the con side, the Motorcycle News tester said that the V7 had a, quote, nasty LCD dash, which they found to be a mystery because previously the V7 had 2 analog dials, which I also much prefer, and as I've said in other videos, the current LCD instrument panel looks sort of like Baby Yoda with the ears sticking out on the side, and it's really pretty ugly. The Motorcycle News tester also said that the V7 switchgear was plasticky and that it was older and cruder feeling than the T100, as well as commenting on the, quote, slightly sticky, crunchy gear shift. Certainly the gear shift on the V7 is apparent. When you shift gears, you know it. You get a nice clunk when it changes. But sometimes mine is hard to find neutral, so I understand that criticism. The tester, however, loved the Triumph T100, which is why it came out on top, of course, and said that it's not only high quality, but it has classy twin gauges, hand-laid paint, lots of chrome, classy wire wheels, nicer switchgear, even commented on its, quote, lovely filler cap. The tester also said that the T100 feels roomier and bigger than the V7, said you feel like you're sitting in the T100 as opposed to on the V7. The controls and the gear shift were both noted as being smooth and light. And then finally, the tester made this comment, said the T100 has been continuously improved since 2017, which is the year that both the T100 and the Moto Guzzi V7 3 were both introduced. Now we're up to the V7 850, but previously it was the V7 3. And while the T100 has been continuously improved since 2017, the tester said that the V7 has basically stood still, other than it's gained more cubic centimeters and 14 more horsepower. So in the final analysis, Motorcycle News, in its test between the T100 and the Moto Guzzi V7, gave the nod to the T100. Another reason people give for not buying the Moto Guzzis is the lack of dealership support. There they have a point. There are only 2 dealers in the state of Oklahoma, one in Oklahoma City and one in Tulsa. And it may be that the one in Oklahoma City is going out of business. That's what I'm on my way to find out, of course. How many dealerships are there? Well, according to the Moto Guzzi official website, there are 104 Moto Guzzi dealerships in the United States. But according to Google search, there may be only about 45 Moto Guzzi dealerships in the United States. That's a pretty big discrepancy between the two statistics there, the two sources of information. By comparison, if you want to look at other retro style bikes that might be a comparison or competitive to the Moto Guzzi V7 or other Moto Guzzi models, the Triumph line, of course, there's the 400s, there's the Bonneville line, some very classically styled bikes. Triumph dealerships, nearly 200. What about Royal Enfield? Of course, the entire Royal Enfield line is retro styled and can be considered competition for the Moto Guzzis. How many Royal Enfield dealers are there? Well, there's more than 120 around the United States. So yes, in terms of dealership support, the critics do have the right idea. There are just not very many Moto Guzzi dealers. Now, of course, in certain parts of the country, California notably, even Texas, also along the East Coast, that's where most of the Moto Guzzi dealerships are located. But in most states, it's a handful at best, maybe only one or two. So it's not easy to find a Moto Guzzi dealership, and depending on what state you live in, the closest one may be a few hundred miles away from where you live. That, of course, has got to contribute to people not buying Moto Guzzi motorcycles. We have arrived at Motiv Cycle Works, which is the Moto Guzzi dealership here in Oklahoma City, and it certainly appears to be open. I'm going to go in and find out what's the current status of things. Well, I have now had it looked at the dealership, and in terms of the noise that I thought I was hearing on the acceleration, they don't hear anything. So I guess it's just my ears and my imagination. Maybe my ears are getting too old. And in terms of the wrench symbol, they say it's just the reminder symbol because I had the service, the 12,000 mile service done before I actually reached 12,000 miles. And so when it kicked over, actually apparently at about 12,500 miles, the wrench symbol came on to remind me to get the service. So it seems that it's fine. Once again proving that there really are no reliability issues with a Moto Guzzi. So riding home from the dealership, I want to clear up the status of that dealership. There is a potential that the dealership will close, not completely, but that it may stop being a Moto Guzzi dealership. So if it drops the Moto Guzzi dealership, then it's no longer a dealer of any kind. Apparently the shop will continue as a shop. It will do repairs and service on Moto Guzzis as well as other classic bikes, but the dealership might disappear, and if so, that will leave only the Moto Guzzi dealership in Tulsa as the only one in Oklahoma. So we're back once again to the problem of not very many dealerships, and the closest one may be many hundreds of miles away. I just had a long conversation with a gentleman who is one of my subscribers and happens to live right here in Oklahoma City, and we just happened to run into each other and he recognized me. And he just bought a Ducati Multistrada V4 and he loves it. He traded in his BMW to get that Multistrada, and we were talking about all the reasons he thought he did not want a Ducati. It's Italian, it's temperamental, it has bad reputation for reliability, it's too skittish, you can't just bobble around town, you can't, you have to get it serviced too often. And he told me that each and every one of those misconceptions was dispelled by the salesperson at the dealership where he bought it. In fact, the service interval for that Multistrada is 36,000 miles. Now, I think that's for a valve check, not just regular service. And they're very reliable. And he found it was actually lighter in weight than the BMW he traded in. And it's very easy, although it has 170 horsepower, I believe he said. It's very easy to just kind of burble around town. It's not skittish. It's not temperamental at all. And he loves it. And I was thinking about that conversation and realizing so many of those things apply to Moto Guzzi as well. People have lots of misconceptions about Moto Guzzi. It's Italian and therefore it must be temperamental or unreliable. Not true. And it's not, of course, overpowered, 67 horsepower. And so it's both easy to just kind of bumble around town, but also when you twist that throttle, you get plenty of power as you need it. There's plenty of torque, and you can really get up and go and put a giggle on your face. It's not a heavy bike. It's only about 215 kilos, which would be around, I guess, 450 pounds. And so I think those misconceptions stop people from even checking out Moto Guzzi. In fact, the man I was just talking to has been riding for 60 years and has never ridden a Moto Guzzi. If people would get past those misconceptions and try one, they might like it. To sum up, why don't people buy Moto Guzzis? Most of the reasons don't hold up. They're not unreliable, they're not temperamental, they have plenty of power and torque, but there are a couple of reasons that do stand up. There are not enough dealerships in the United States, so buying or servicing a Moto Guzzi might be difficult. And at least for the V7, this is still an old-school mechanical motorcycle. Yes, it has modern features like fuel injection, traction control, ABS, even cruise control on the V7 Sport, but it's not smoothed out like the Triumphs or the Royal Enfields. It is, as Motorcycle News put it, agricultural. But that's what gives it character and makes it more interesting to ride than most motorcycles. So if you're in the market for a new retro-style bike, check out Moto Guzzi. You might be pleasantly surprised. Thank you for watching to the end. Please give this video a like and please subscribe. And I will see you in the next one, which will be coming to you from a surprising location. Be sure to watch to see where I am. Until then, ride safe, keep the headlight forward and the rubber side down.